What's It's your finfriendtai here. Today we're going to be going over everything you need to know about bank accounts. To start off, I know there's so many bank accounts out in the world. They all have different names at every single bank. And I want to emphasize today that banks are not as bad as they seem as long as you know how to use the correct bank accounts. And it's definitely better than stuffing it under your mattress. And that's because of inflation. So what are all the different types of bank accounts? Well, first we have the checking account. And that's your regular bank account that you deposit money in, withdraw money from, linked to your debit card, and it really doesn't earn much interest. It's mostly for short-term cash liquidity. And I'll probably be using the word liquidity a lot, and that just means are you able to access your cash in a very quick manner. And then next we have long-term savings accounts, which besides the name is actually the same thing as a checking account. It just has a higher interest rate, and that's roughly around 0.5% to the highest I've seen is like 1.75%. And so it's actually below inflation. So actually you'd be losing money, relatively speaking, by putting money into these accounts. And the banks will come after me for saying this because this is something that they don't want you to know. And then we have self-directed investing. And this is really an investment account that allows you to buy and sell stocks. And they can belong in both a TFSA, an RRSP, and a cash account. And we'll go into that in a short bit. But just know in general that there is a self-directed investing account. And then we have these mutual fund accounts, which are essentially automatic accounts that are created whenever you invest in mutual funds. And these two can also be in a regular non-registered account, in a TFSA, RRSP, RESP, and so forth. And then we come down into these two highlighted sections, and I wanted to highlight them because they're not really a bank account. They're more like a tax shelter benefit that is applied to the four accounts that are mentioned at the top. And so you can have a checking inside of a TFSA, you can have a long-term savings inside of a TFSA, you can have a self-directed inside of a TFSA and a mutual funds, and the same thing applies to RRSP and RESP. Now the difference here is in whether it's the money that goes into these accounts are before tax or after tax. But overall, these are the 6 main bank accounts. Okay, and so I want to dive into more concrete examples of these 6 categories. And I've also added credit cards and GICs, but we'll get into that later. So here we're going to look at TD's offerings for all of these bank accounts. So for the checking, we have TD Unlimited Checking, all-inclusive, everyday, minimum. And really, they're all the same thing with different cost structures every month and slightly different applications that honestly, marginally, don't really mean much. And just having any one of these, really, it's not going to impact you significantly, in my opinion. And what they're really for is the ability to receive money from your employer, quick access to withdrawing and depositing money, transferring money to other bank accounts, your credit cards, as well as other people, and paying your bills. Next, we have long-term savings, which again, just to re-emphasize, they're essentially check accounts 2.0 with a higher interest savings. And then we move on to the self-directed investing. And so now we can get into the nitty-gritty details between the different investing vehicles. And so first we have this cash account for both Canadian and USD. And this essentially means that there is no tax shelter with it. So whatever investment you put in there, the investment income that you earn is all taxable. And then next we get into the second category, which is TFSA direct investing. And so the money that you can actually contribute inside of a TFSA comes from after-tax dollars. And so if you earn $50,000 in a year and you pay taxes, the remaining amount is the money that you can use to contribute inside of a TFSA. An RRSP, on the other hand, uses before tax income. And so before you have to pay tax on any dollars, you can contribute to an RRSP in order to save on taxes that you would normally have had to pay. And lastly, an RESP direct investing account is similar to a TFSA in that it uses after-tax dollars. However, the difference here is that it's specifically for education. But that's roughly what you need to know about the intricacies between all of these accounts. And then again, we have mutual funds, which are essentially the same thing as self-directed investing accounts from a tax perspective. The only difference is that you're not buying and selling stocks, you're just giving your money to the bank and they're managing it for you. And then we go on to the credit cards below, which are default accounts created whenever you open any credit card. There's nothing too special here. You use it to make purchases with borrowed money. You can incur interest fees and you can get cash back and rewards depending on the card that you use. And then the last category here are GICs, which are not bank accounts, but they are kind of the equivalent of long-term savings accounts. And I just thought I'd mention it because whenever you go to a bank and want to open a long-term savings account, it's usually suggested that GICs are an alternative option. And essentially what they are short-term investments that allow you to park your money in a very safe place, and they give you a small percentage interest on it. And it's almost guaranteed the percentage that they give you. However, your money is locked in. So unlike a long-term savings account, you can't withdraw it as soon as possible. It's locked in for the period that it's stated in the contract. And the interest rate is slightly higher than the long-term savings account, but overall, it's not the greatest bang for your buck. And that's just my opinion. It's not advice at all. So yeah, this is a very general overview of all of the different bank accounts in TD. And this applies to any other bank that you would visit. They would just have different bank names. Cool. So now let's take a look at the total landscape of the financial system in Canada. And so we have Toby here on the left, and he doesn't know where to start. And he's completely overwhelmed with the amount of options. So let's help him out. So first, for the checking category, we have all the major banks at the top, and we also have these new financial players such as WealthSimple, Tangerine, EQ Bank, Stack, and Koho. And so the major banks, they all relatively offer similar products, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. Now, the one thing that I will add is that EQ Bank offers a superior interest rate of 1.5% currently to date for their checking accounts, and that makes it very attractive for parking your money somewhere for the short term and having liquidity. So it's something that I would highly recommend. And then for Stack and Koho, these are not necessarily checking accounts, but they are prepaid debit cards that you can create, and they essentially act similarly to a credit card in the sense that they give you rewards and cash back for certain purchases, but it's not the same as a credit card in that you actually use and have to load money that you currently have and not money that you're borrowing. So we're actually going to skim over the long-term savings because I don't really believe in long-term savings accounts, so I'm not going to go into it. But by all means, if that's something you're interested in, feel free to dive in. Moving on to self-directed investing accounts, this is probably the one that gets the most confusing. There's many terms for self-directed investing accounts, one of which is stock trading accounts, investment accounts, and this is all really the same thing. And not only do we have the banks here, but we have other players such as WealthSimple, Questrade, Interactive Brokers, Webull, Coinbase, and of course the notorious Robinhood. And so these are really called investment or stock brokers, and they allow you to trade and invest stocks. And you can totally take a dive into all of the different pricing options and services that each one of these banks and financial services provides, but I'm not going to go into it. And then we have mutual funds, which essentially fall along the same lines of the self-directing accounts. However, these aren't just financial institutions that have departments that do stock and investment research so that they're able to provide mutual funds. And so that's why I've added Desjardins, Vanguard, Fidelity, and Goldman Sachs as an example to illustrate that. And then lastly, we have the credit cards on the bottom, and there's a plethora of options here. I'm just listing a few. Of course, the big banks offer credit cards, and by all means, the credit cards that they offer are relatively good. And then we have these other offerings such as Tangerine, Simply, American Express, and Canadian Tire. So now that Toby's seen the entire landscape, he's really wondering, what is the best-in-class stack of all of these services? So we're going to dive into that. What is the best breed and stack for Toby? Well, it depends on person to person, but relatively speaking, this is kind of the path. So for checking accounts, we have choosing one of the following of the normal financial institutions that you're used to. So TD, RBC, BMO, CIBC, National Bank, Scotia, and etc. And then in addition, choosing one of the following of EQ, Stack, and Koho. And this is really just to amplify the current services that you would use anyways. For Stack and Koho, just adding rewards and cashback to purchases that you might already make with your regular debit card, and using EQ Bank for short-term gains on easily accessible cash. And then moving on to self-directed investing, we have, again, choose one of the following institutions that are displayed there. And really there's marginal benefits for using each of the platforms. It depends on your preference for certain financial tools or the cost structure of how each trade works. But I'd say, relatively speaking, there's really marginal benefits in choosing a broker. And at the bottom there, these are the cryptocurrency exchanges that offer the ability to buy and sell cryptocurrencies. And then moving on to mutual funds again, you have choose one of the following major financial institutions. And really there is not much marginal benefit between the 6. And lastly, for credit cards, you can choose one or more of the following, and that really depends on what type of items you're spending each month, and the reward structure depends on what you would buy, right? So for Simply Financial, they offer a very superior cashback if you eat out a lot, whereas Canadian Tire gives you a lot of rewards if you shop at their retailing stores. It really depends on your personal preference and your spending patterns. But again, you'll be pretty well off choosing one of the following, so I wouldn't sweat it too much. And if you're really curious, I made a video on my Instagram and TikTok about it. Let's dive into an actual example. We have Toby here. He's a doctor in training. He's 27, newly married, potentially planning to have kids in the near future, earns $70,000, but also spends $30,000 a year. We're gonna be looking into what he does every month with his money and looking at how choosing different bank accounts and using their services impacts him financially over the course of a year. So first we have checking accounts. So Toby is using TD, EQ Bank, Stack, and Koho. And so he earns $4,479 per month after tax on average. And then he moves $1,000 into EQ Bank, which gives a 1.5% interest rate. He spends $500 a month using TD, Stack, and Koho collectively through his debit cards. And then he has $2,979 remaining. EQ Bank would save him $15 a month because of the 1.5% interest rate. The debit cards give an average reward for approximately 2% of the 500, so $10 a month, and that leads to an overall impact of $300 for the year. Now the 2% for the debit cards, that depends on which retailers that you use. This is not an exact number. Then moving on to the credit cards, he spends $2,000 a month using TD, Tangerine, and Simply credit card, and now he has $979 a month. The credit cards can collectively give him around 1.5% cash back on the $2,000, and that leads to $30 a month and $360 per year. Next, we have the self-directed investing account. And so he deposits $250 into TFSA, $250 into RRSP, and $250 into crypto. If we move on to the impact section, so that $250, if we assume that he makes a 10% return by investing in something like an S&P 500, then he would earn $25 a month. And then the tax that he saves on that $25 would equate to approximately $2.90 per month. And then the RRSP actually saves him $58 a month, and this is because RRSP contributions come pre-tax. And his current tax level is around 23.2% based off of his annual earnings of $70,000. Then we have crypto, and crypto is extremely volatile, but just for simplicity's sake, we're gonna say he makes a 10% return on crypto as well. And so that gives him $25 a month minus the tax that he needs to pay because crypto currently can't be inside of a tax shelter. And so that would earn him $22 a month. And overall, the entire impact of the self-directed investing accounts would be $1,261.20 a year. And then lastly, we'll have the mutual funds account. So he deposits the remaining $229 that he has into RESP mutual funds, and he long-term holds this. Now the RESP is after-tax dollars, and so he does save on taxes in this case. And mutual funds generally don't have a high return on investment, and so we'll give him an approximately modest return of 3%, and that earns him $6.87 per month. And that equates to $82.44 per year. In total, his financial impact for all of the bank accounts across the board would be $2,003.64 for each year. And you can see using the right stack and the right services in combination can really deliver strong financial incentives. So it's worth your time to check out each of the services that are provided. And this is by no means the recipe that you need to follow. This is just an example. And so that concludes today's video. Thanks for watching. And if you liked the content, please like, comment, and subscribe. You can also follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, and Facebook. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.